Hello everyone, you're listening to the Earful Tower podcast. My name's Oliver G, and if you think there's a bit of a spring in my step by the sound of my voice, you're exactly right, because today I'm taking you with me into the Bar Hemingway, or as most people call it, the Hemingway Bar, but you're soon to learn that that's incorrect. I went in there not just with any old person, I went in there with a Hemingway herself. I went with Claudine Hemingway, a relative, a somewhat distant relative, but a relative nonetheless of Ernest Hemingway. We sat in the bar that's named after him on a lively Sunday evening, and we just chatted. We chatted about Hemingway, we chatted about the Ritz, we chatted a lot about cocktails, and we talked about Claudine Hemingway herself, and we talked about the Paris tours that she gives in the footsteps of Hemingway himself. Now, I should mention, this show is brought to you by French Today. If you want to get that additional 10% off, it's frenchtoday.com/earful10, or you can find it in the show notes. Click on that and it'll give you a further 10% off. And a little birdie told me they're currently having a 20% sale, so that means 30% off for you. Go and check that out, learn French. I'll be talking about them at the end of the episode, as well as reading out a little bit of Gmail. But get comfortable, get excited, maybe get a martini. I don't know if I should encourage you, especially if you're driving. Maybe don't get the martini, but get ready, because you're about to join me in the Bar Hemingway, one of the fanciest bars in the city of Paris, on a kind of a lively night. In fact, you'll hear some background noises. You'll hear the clatter of expensive glasses on expensive tables. But just to set the scene, as we sat down in this beautiful bar, I should add, it was Fashion Week, so there were all these beautiful models left and right, draped over all the lounges in the Ritz. I'll talk about that in a second too. But we walked in there right as it opened, and right there, sitting on the table, glasses of water, expensive-looking drinks. I'll be honest, this isn't the kind of bar that I hang out at. But if you want to do the same thing, save up, because it's not one of the cheapest bars in Paris. I'll say that now. But let's get in there. The Hemingway Bar, the Bar Hemingway with Claudine Hemingway. Let's do it. What are we doing?
You have to go through this amazing menu that basically they change this every probably 6 months or something. Mm-hmm. I have a whole collection, don't tell them.
Would you steal the menu?
Well, one time they gave it to me. The other time, I feel I have a right. But they have little stories on here, but they also have some of his favorite cocktails on here.
So they've organized this menu to look kind of like a newspaper.
Yes,
here.
Exactly.
And they've called it the Hemingway Star.
Yes. And then they have some little stories on here as well. I always have the French 75. That's my favorite cocktail.
Where do you see that?
I don't see it actually on here, but I know they have it. But there's a lot on here, so it's easy to get lost.
They kind of explain the drinks as if they're people or something.
Exactly.
Okay, so if I were to read one, for example, the world-famous Clean Dirty Martini has toured the globe. Today it's heralded as the best dry martini in the world, with a taste of olives accompanied by a frozen cube of olive juice from America. What does that mean? Maybe I should have that. It's a breakthrough in the art of the martini. Once again confirms the presence of the Bar Hemingway amongst the world's greatest bars.
Yes.
And everything's in English.
Yes, everything's in English. And then the head bartender here is Colin Fields, and he's like an institution. I think his favorite, he says, is the serendipity. He says it tastes, it's like a taste of France. It has Calvados, bitter apple juice, champagne.
I'll tell you, if you did want a champagne, and for the people listening at home, if they're interested in the prices here.
Oh, yes.
There are some bottles as expensive as 900 euros.
We should get that.
Oh my. Oh my. The Belle Époque Perrier Jouet Rosé. It's not even a champagne, it's a rosé.
Yes.
Okay.
900 euros.
What are you thinking though? What are you going to
I think I'm going to get the French 75.
Okay.
Are you going to get the Clean Dirty Martini?
I think so, because I don't usually drink martinis. Ever.
Very fancy.
Yeah, I've got to step out into
I've always wanted to be able to drink martinis just because the old Hollywood, romantic look of them, but I just can't do it.
Well, we're going to Hollywood tonight.
We're going Hollywood.
And it says at the top of this menu, and I'll take a picture of it. Well, it says the best bar in the world, and it says, what's Burton is coming to town? What is it?
I don't know.
That's the bartender who used to open this bar. He used to serve Hemingway. He's right there.
Oh, right. So there's a picture of him as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that's Ernest Hemingway there.
No, that's not right there.
Okay, on the right. Okay. Wow.
Have you two decided on a cocktail?
I think we have.
Alright.
After you.
I had the French 75.
French 75, excellent.
And I would like the world famous clean dirty. So Claudine, we're sitting here.
Yes.
How you feeling?
I feel pretty great. I always feel great when I'm in the Bar Hemingway.
Why?
Well, it's just, partially because it's Hemingway, but it is just kind of harken back to like a different time. It's a different bar than anything you would really see in Paris. Just dark and...
Not to mention that everyone spoke English with us. That was kind of trippy.
Yes.
That's not usual.
No. Well, I think it's just because it is the Bar Hemingway and...
I like how when you said that, you look over your left shoulder to your right shoulder to a picture of Hemingway on the front cover of Life magazine from 1961, framed on the wall.
Yeah, there's pictures of him. That would have been about a month after he died.
Right.
There's pictures everywhere. There's letters. There's like a little like a cigarette package up there in a frame, and then I don't think like there's typewriters and things like that, but I don't think those were his.
No.
I don't think they would just leave him out.
It's hard to say. I mean, like, what about behind you up there? There's shark jaws and like deer antler. I don't know if that's got a connection or if they just found them in a flea market.
I think it just kind of plays into the nostalgia of the hunting and the wild macho man that he was.
Now you're quite the expert on Hemingway for two reasons. One, you're a relative.
Yes.
Second, you give tours, Hemingway tours of Paris. So Hemingway by Hemingway.
Yes.
Right? But you were telling me as we walked in that bar over there isn't even... that's the bar that he went to next door.
Yes, so the bar that we're in right now, the Bar Hemingway, was originally called Le Petit Bar, and it was actually the ladies' bar because the men stayed over on that side and the women were pushed over here. And it was very tiny. It was just this one side of the room.
So they didn't have the stairs going up to the...
So it was very small. He actually would go next door when he was here during the 20s, which is the time everybody knows of him because of the movable fees. He never came to the Ritz. He could never afford it.
Right.
Fitzgerald would come here all the time. One time Fitzgerald tried to get him to come and he didn't because it just was too expensive even then.
Yeah.
So when he came back after the war, when he came, the famous liberating story, he actually was across the hall. So that was the bar where he would spend all of his time and drink, the legendary story of
now you've made two references to this legendary story. There are people out there who haven't heard it.
The legendary martini story.
Tell.
Well, in 1944, in August, he came back to Paris, and he was, a writer, and he liked to write articles and go all over Spain and everywhere, following wars for like 30, 40 years. So he came to Paris and he said, I'm going to come to Paris, I'm going to liberate the Ritz. And so he came across the bridge and he was trying to get a group of people with him. And he came here and he walked in the door and he was like, where are the Germans? And they were like, oh, Monsieur Hemingway, they're gone. Like, it was like the 26th of August. So it was like 3 days into the liberation. And because the Nazis were staying here, they were staying on the Vendôme side, and then other people could stay on this side. And so he was like, okay. And they said, well, you have to leave your machine gun here. So he put down his machine gun, came into the bar across the way with about 20 of his men. And then the story of that he drank 51 martinis.
He drank 51 martinis.
Yeah. He did not, though. It was all of his men. But every time you read this article about it in Vogue or in Forbes or all of these different places, it always says that Hemingway drank 51 martinis.
Which would kill you.
Yes, it would kill you. But that all happened over across the hall.
Right.
So it didn't actually happen. And so, they paid homage to him later, much later in like the 80s, and naming this the Bar Hemingway, even though he'd never really been in here.
So what was his idea to drink the 51? Was that to kick the Germans out? Or was it just
I think he just came in here because he had like 20 or so guys with him, and then they just ordered a whole bunch of martinis. Right. His belief was that he called it the Montgomery Martini, which was named after a field marshal, and he said he always had to have a martini before he went into battle, and it was 17 parts to 1 gin to vermouth. Before he would have this field marshal would have to drink that before he'd go off into battle.
That's very specific, Hemingway.
Yeah.
So your connection? We talked about this a little bit, but your is sort of on the grandfather's side.
Yes, my grandfather's.
Yeah.
It's distant on my grandfather's father's father's
Right.
side.
But you got the name Hemingway.
Yes.
So you're a true
Yeah.
Hemingway.
Yes.
Do you feel any kind of connection here besides?
I definitely do, and the more things I read that he's written, and the more things I will read, about that people have written about him, there's sometimes little things where I'm like, oh, that's exactly how I feel, or exactly something I do,
Right.
which without even knowing it, and I can't even think honestly of anything specifically right now, but there's been a few times reading these, I'm like, oh, wait, that's exactly how I respond to something like that, or
Do you have a propensity for bullfighting, for example?
oh, I do. I really
yeah.
love some bullfighting.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Right on the money. But
I try to do it in my spare time.
But you were drawn to Paris as well. Your grandfather had
Yes.
a strong connection here.
Yeah, my grandparents would come here between the 70s and 90s. They came here quite a few times. And my grandpa loved to take photographs. And so my grandfather would get up early in the morning. My grandmother would stay sleeping in bed. And he would just wander the streets with his camera and just take all of these pictures. He loved to do that. Was his favorite thing to do. Just to wander around and take pictures of, whether it's the Eiffel Tower or Arc de Triomphe, but also just random buildings or, just a gate on something. And I find myself doing the same exact thing
Yeah. me
when
too.
I'm here.
Yeah.
And, well, yeah, you and the doorstops.
Yeah.
I will. He has pictures of door knockers, though.
Send them
Yes,
along.
I will.
Send them along.
But so he would come and he would take all these pictures, and then when I was really little, I would sit there. It was the days when you had to send off your film to get developed and wait for it. Come back, and he would sit there at the table and write on the back of it, like September 29th, 1977, Arc de Triomphe, and would write some little woman getting her baguette for the day, write something on it.
Yeah,
And so
that's cool.
I would always look at him, and then I would say, "Ooh, what is that?" And he would tell me. He was like, "Oh, this is," So at a very early age, I kind of fell in love with Paris.
Right.
So now when I come, I bring his photos with me, and so I recreate. I try to go to the exact same spot, hold it up, and recreate it.
That's nice because you can do that. What you've got is you can do that for several generations. You could do it in old Hemingway's books as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then your grandfather's photos.
Yeah.
Are you leaving something behind for future generations?
Yeah.
What are your Instagram account?
Yes.
That's the future of.
That's the future.
You can put more longer comments on those ones. But yeah, that brings us to today.
Yes.
You're doing tours of Paris.
I am.
You're not
Paris
here all
with
the time.
Hemingway.
Paris with Hemingway.
Yes.
So what are we looking for online if we want to find you?
Well, Instagram is Claudine Bleu Blonde Rouge, and it's BLEU, like the French Blonde Rouge. And so that has I write little descriptions of history every single day.
And then suddenly, at this point in the conversation, a waitress came to the table with 2 drinks on a tray. 2 beautiful drinks, I should say. Claudine had a big tumbler for her drink, and on the side was a huge, pristine white rose, which we're about to talk about. Mine was a more traditional martini glass with the words Bar Hemingway, big opaque letters that you could see over the frosted rim of the glass. We discussed the drinks. So hang on, we'll just talk about these drinks for a second. You've got what did you get again?
I got the French 75, which is my favorite drink.
Even though it wasn't on the menu?
Yes.
You ordered it even though, I didn't even catch that. Okay, that's pretty cool. And they served it with a full rose.
Yes, and well, you know why? Do you notice that you don't have a rose and I have a rose?
Is it gender inequality?
It is. No, it is actually a little way to harken back to it being the ladies' bar. So all the women will always have a rose in their drink.
Oh, nice.
And it's kind of a little way to tie in the past history of it being the ladies' bar.
What if I take a photo of you right now with the rose in your drink and the microphone in the Hemingway bar? And this picture, everyone, will be on the website. You know that already. And then my drink has got this big ice cube in the middle. It's apparently olive juice from America.
Oh, yes.
So
Fancy.
Let's have a little taste and give it a review.
Oh, that's not that strong.
That's strong. There's no way I'm drinking 51 of them. Oh my. Is yours good?
Buckle up, Oliver. Let's do it.
So where were we with your story? You were doing tours.
Oh, yes.
Rouge, what was it?
Bleu Blanc Rouge. Claudine Bleu Blanc Rouge.
Okay.
But so when I'm here, I'm not living here yet. Hopefully in the next few years.
Where are you living?
I live in Portland, Oregon.
Okay, nice.
Most of the time
Yep.
when I'm not here. So
Bridge City, isn't it?
it is. There is a lot of bridges.
Yeah.
Very good.
I met someone from Portland the other day, a listener. Okay, so you live over there, but you're planning to come here.
Yes,
Three
I
more-
come 3 times a year.
Right.
And so I'm here in September, in the spring, and then also in January.
Okay. And so what's it like doing tours for people who are Hemingway fans who want to follow in Hemingway's footsteps and doing it with someone like you who's directly...
It's been a lot of fun. It's so like I've had people that know a little bit about him, and then I've had people that like know nothing about him, or I'm waiting to get that person that knows like more than I do.
Yeah. That's the fear, isn't it?
Yeah, but we started, Pantheon, we do that whole area. We follow, where the places he lived. But then I also bring in, Saint Etienne du Mont and go through Luxembourg, because he did have such a tie to the Luxembourg Gardens, the Statue of Liberty, and then down to his second house that he lived in with Pauline.
Right. And that's near a mutual friend of ours, John Baxter's house.
Yes, it is.
And you've been there lately, right?
Yes, my favorite person. And, John lives in the building that he liberated, before he liberated the Ritz, he liberated Odeon. Because he went coming down the street and screamed up Sylvia, and they looked out the window and they ran downstairs to see him, and he comes into their apartment up on the 4th floor of John's building, and he said, what can, he was like, what can I do for you girls? And they were like, there's gunfire, there's still gunfire, you could help make it stop. And he was like, okay. And he went back down to his Jeep, got a bunch of men, got some guns, went back up onto the roof. There was a lot of shooting, and then it stopped, and then that was it. So he actually liberated Odeon. He liberated martinis at the Ritz.
Fair enough, and cool that I'm following in his footsteps right now.
Yes.
But, they're quite generous here with the there's a massive plate of chips, olives, and
Marcona almas, I think.
Is that what they are? It's not bad, huh?
No, it's very good. They only serve 2 things as far as food here. These little tiny hot dogs and little tiny hamburgers.
Right.
And I did have some one time with some friends, and they were actually pretty tasty. That's the only food you get here is hamburgers and hot dogs.
All right, the American thing continues.
Yeah.
But they're a little pricey, right?
It's very pricey.
You need the right kind of personality to
Yes.
to eat that kind of thing.
You do. There's everything here. I mean, every cocktail is 30 euros.
Yeah, 30 euros. What's that in American dollars?
It's about $35, $36.
There you go. Very fascinating to sit in the Hemingway bar with you. Maybe we'll continue this conversation elsewhere in the Ritz after we finish this drink. Is that all right with you?
Sounds great to me.
And just like that, we'd finished our drinks and we decided to record the last bit in a little wider area outside. Plus, I wanted to explore the Ritz. So at this point, we walked out of the Bar Hemingway. We headed to one of the sort of big chaises longues in the lobby. I say lobby. The Ritz is so big that to get to the Hemingway bar, and at this point I think you'll notice that I interchange between Bar Hemingway and Hemingway bar, you have to walk all the way through the hotel. It's right at the very, very back. And so we walked to some of the lounges that were in that sort of big opening space in front of the big staircase that you'll see pictured, I suppose, on my Instagram account soon. And we sat down. But briefly, I ducked down to the bathroom, partly because I just wanted to see it. And as I went down these stairs to see what I knew were these sort of gold-plated furnishings in the bathroom, they were doing a big fashion shoot for Fashion Week. And they were all wearing kind of wedding dresses. And it was just it was a sight to behold. All the photographers were down there, all the models were down there, and I had this feeling of, gosh, isn't Paris a intriguing place to be at the best of times, at the worst of times even. So I went back up to Claudine, and we just sort of finished off the chat up there. Claudine,
Oliver.
it was well, we're both one martini to the win now.
50 to go.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say the same thing. But it was kind of noisy in there. I hope that people listening at home felt, rather than be irritated by the noise, but felt they were in the Hemingway bar with us, or eavesdropped on some conversations as I was doing towards the end. What do you think of the crowd in there?
It's usually always Americans,
right.
or a lot of sometimes British people,
right.
But it's not French people. Like, it's definitely not. I don't know if I've ever honestly been in there and heard somebody speaking French.
Right. It was especially different just now because it's Fashion Week in Paris, and there were a lot of fashionable people in there.
Yes.
I felt out of place even though I dressed up for the occasion. How did you felt all right in that?
Well, I kind of knew. I was just like, oh, I just know how it's going to be. But, you know, you just be who you are.
You knew what you were getting into.
I knew what I was
This isn't
getting
your
into.
first rodeo.
But I have seen celebrities in there, too.
Spill some names.
Well, it was the last time I was like, she dated David Beckham's son. Chloe.
What? That's not a celebrity.
David Beckham is.
David Beckham
but
is.
No, Chloe Moritz, I think was her name. I don't know.
I'm not going to give you that
I
one.
don't know. I didn't really care.
But what was cool at the end there is the waitress came up and started chatting.
Yes.
She's a fan of John Baxter.
She is a fan. She said, do you happen to know somebody named John Baxter? And I said, oh, my favorite person.
Wow.
Yes, that John Baxter. He gets around.
Small world. And
Very small world.
For anyone, any of you, I should just mention this, any Patreon supporters listening to this, I hope to see you in October 22nd with John Baxter at the Assyrian Embassy, the big event. Claudine, you're missing that one.
I'm just missing it.
You are?
Maybe
What
I'll
a
come
shame.
back. I'll just come back.
You could.
I've done it before.
While it's on my mind, thank you for your long time support of the earful, by the way.
So happy to
You know, I
be
looked it
part-
up. It's almost been 2 years.
And part of it is because I love listening to it. I listen to it every week, twice a week when it comes out. And I just feel that if you're listening to it, you might as well, what's $5 or $10 a month?
Well, you guys listen to Claudine. She knows what she's talking about that. But no, in all sincerity, thank you for helping the show to
Thank
survive.
you.
But let's finish on what's coming up for you.
Yes.
I know that you're coming back in January. Is that
I'm
right?
coming back in January, so I'm definitely going to be available. I'll put those dates on my website too, which is also ClaudineHemingway.com. I'll put those dates, and also for the spring.
Mm-hmm.
So I have tours there. But I do also write a lot for BonjourParis.com. I write a lot of articles kind of about the other secret things of Paris, or not really secret, but the things that are off the beaten track,
Mm-hmm.
the things that aren't on the, top 10 list of tourists when they're coming to Paris. So I spend a lot of time doing that and then writing about Paris history every day. But
You're a big fan of Paris.
I am a big fan of Paris.
And everybody, don't forget, Hemingway has one M.
Yes, please. And also it's Bar Hemingway, not the Hemingway bar. It's the Bar Hemingway.
Why do they do that though? Is that
I don't
like a
know.
French thing, like a car red instead
don't
of a
know.
red car?
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. So it's the Bar Hemingway, everyone.
Yes.
It's ClaudineHemingway.com, and that Instagram channel
Is
is
Claudine Bleu Blanc Rouge.
Claudine Bleu Blanc Rouge, spelled BLEU.
Yes.
And that will all be linked in the show notes below. But I think we can wind it up there, Claudine.
Yes.
Thank you so much for your time.
Merci beaucoup.
And it was lovely to see you.
You too.
And I guess I'll see you again in January.
Let's go drink those 50 more martinis,
We've got
Oliver.
them lined up on the bar, right? All right, goodbye, everybody. We're on the way back into the Bar Hemingway. Well, there you have it. That was Claudine Hemingway. If you want to find out more information about her, ClaudineHemingway.com is the best way to do it. Follow her on Instagram as well. Bleu, Blonde, Rouge. The information is on her website, ClaudineHemingway.com. Just one M. Don't get too excited about using those M's there. Now, as usual, I'm going to read out a little bit of Gmail, which is people who've sent in messages over the past week or so. And then I'm going to finish with French Today. French Today, I'm going to tell you how to say I don't care. I don't care in French, because there's a whole section on it in À moi Paris Level 7. But first, a little bit of Gmail. I wonder if you're sitting there right now thinking, will he read my email? If that's what you're thinking, and your name's Sharon Peterson, then you're exactly right, because that's what I'm going to read right now. Sharon Peterson. I say Peterson. It could be Peterson, because Pedersen, that looks very Danish to me. I would guess that deep down you're Danish, Sharon. But anyway, I quite like this email. It says, "Good morning, Oliver, and greetings from the Redneck Riviera." I read that and I thought, what? She continues, "My home is in Niceville, Florida, or maybe Niceville, but I like to tell folks I'm from," I guess it's Niceville. Niceville? Let's say Niceville. But I like to tell folks I'm from Niceville. One time I took a picture from the train of that very sign at the Nice train station. The area where I live is quite beautiful with emerald beaches and white sands. However, I'd give it up in a New York second to live in Paris. It's funny because a lot of people in Paris would want to live in New York, I reckon. Anyway, Sharon continues. She says, "In April, I spent a fabulous weekend in Paris after a work week in Luxembourg. It was one Airbnb adventure after another. From a golf cart ride on those gorgeous streets to a rooftop tour with secret jazz tour and shopping for honey and the Marais in between. Spectacular weekend. After coming back to my little town of Niceville, actually Niceville with a southern accent, Niceville. Is that a southern accent? Niceville. I so missed Paris. I started trolling through podcasts about Paris when I stumbled onto yours. While it's not the same as being there, it sure helps fill the gap in my soul. Are we still doing a southern accent here? I absolutely love your podcast. As you can see, I recently became a Patreon supporter. Woohoo! When I joined, I honestly started looking for airline tickets so I could attend your gala at the embassy, but due to work commitments, just could not make that happen. Hoping it will become an annual event, and then perhaps I'll make it to next year's. P.S. I adore your wife's shoes. Ask her if she's going to restock those black pumps with the stripes on the heels. Cheers, mate. Sharon Peterson. So to answer some of your questions, firstly, thanks for the cheers, mate. I wonder if that was inspired by the recent episode with Michael from Pan Am, another Australian. To answer your first question, I asked Lena about her shoes. She said she's not restocking them, so you missed out on that one, I'm afraid, just like you missed out on the event. But maybe next year I will redo that event. Let's see how it goes. Sharon's, of course, referring to the big embassy gala, the big, the biggest Eiffel Tower event known to man. Known to history. I think there's going to be something like 80 to 100 people, and I'm getting very excited because it's just in over a week's time. But I really enjoyed that email. I love hearing you guys where you're from, and Nashville, Florida is probably my favorite name so far. I'm going to do one more email because it's kind of on topic and I like it. I got an email from Kim Loftus titled, "Thank you for a great explore." And I thought, what's going on here? She says, "Hi Oliver, we're back home after 2 incredible weeks in France. And one of the things that I look forward to when I got home was catching up on all your podcasts that I hadn't heard since mid-September." That sounds like a binge listener to me. Says, "I really enjoyed hearing David Downey and you talk about the Marais since we just explored that area with you." And this is true. Kim Loftus booked one of my tours. So for you guys who don't, I don't usually talk, in fact, I rarely talk about this, but I do occasional tours of the Marais and Montmartre. But specifically, my favorite to do is the tour of the Philippe Auguste Wall around the Marais. Long-time listeners will know that I'm obsessed with it, and sometimes when tourists share that interest with me, I track down the bits. And this was the reason I want to read this email is because we had quite the adventure. I found some new parts of the wall. So she says, I'll continue. "Thanks to your podcast, there's a lot we enjoyed in Paris because you talked about it. Discovering the wall with you was a highlight, of course, but also seeing the Roman arena, exploring the Marais, and so on, so on, so on." And she says, "Especially seeing the Philippe Auguste Wall at the Louvre. It was magnificent. Forget the Mona Lisa. See the fortress in the basement." Well, that's funny because that's what I told you, Kim, in email, and you said, we don't want to go to the Louvre, so I'm glad you made it. And so what she continues with is, "I've added a couple of photos in the secret courtyard where we found the door to the back of a tower remnant." And then she continues with some other stuff, but I want to focus on that because it's a really good story. A lot of you will have heard the David Downey episode that I recorded in the Jardin des Rosiers, and in there, maybe I should rewind a bit. The Philippe Auguste Wall used to encircle Paris about 800 years ago, was swallowed up by the city, and if you're very cunning, you can find some parts of it, some remnants that are left over. And so right where I was sitting with David in the interview a couple of weeks ago, we were sitting near one of the towers. But when I went and revisited it with Kim Loftus from the email that I just read, we were walking out of that park, and lo and behold, there was a courtyard door open right next to the park. And to quote last week's episode, I used the Oliver G method. I'm not quoting myself, I'm quoting Steve Oswald, I think it is, who referred to the Oliver G method of sneaking into courtyards. I snuck in with Kim and her friends, or her party, and we walked into this courtyard, and what do you think we saw? We saw the back of this big tower, which is obviously closed to the public. It's in a private garden. And most intriguingly of all was there was this kind of little door at the bottom of it. And I mean really little door. There wasn't like a door handle or anything or a wooden door, just an opening where I assume people used to go in to climb up to the top to fire arrows at any Englishman in the area. But that was really wonderful. And Kim has attached a picture of me. I'm looking at the picture now. Me in the garden, sort of, I don't know if you'd say guilty look on my face or an excited look in my face, but I'm there with the door in the background, and I'm going to add that to one of my social media accounts. So hopefully you're all following Instagram or Facebook or whatever, because I'm going to put it up there, probably on Instagram story. Anyway, thanks for the email, Kim, and thank you for the email, Sharon and Steve last week, 3 Patreon supporters, my favorite kind of listeners. Now, I'm going to get on to French Today. French Today is a audiobook company based in France. Camille is regularly on this show, and this episode was brought to you by them. So, in return for sponsoring the show, I've promised them I'll read out little bits from their audiobook because I use it to learn French myself. And this bit that I've decided to talk about today is from À moi Paris Level 7, an audiobook that's quite advanced, to be honest. And section 3 is called I Don't Care. And I just thought I'd read to you a little bit because if you're like me, you like new ways of saying things. And here's a way that you can say the phrase I don't care while sounding kind of cool, if you ask me. So Camille writes, this is a bit off subject, but I thought I'd include how to say I don't care and it's all the same to me in French. And here's how you do it, basically. So the first one, the main one, ça m'est égal. And that's kind of it's all the same to me. Ça m'est égal, ça m'est égal. She says that's a neutral attitude. You can shrug your shoulders a little bit, depending on the mood. And the M in it is an indirect object pronoun. So ça m'est égal. It's all the same to me. It's all equal to me. If you're a fan of, I'm going off the book for a sec. If you're a fan of Edith Piaf, the one about regretting, regrette rien, that one, hard to pronounce. But she says that. Ça m'est égal, or ça me bien est égal, something like that. You can listen out for that. So the other ways, these are all, as Camille says in the book, they're all in the affirmative in French, but in negative in English. In other words, we say I don't mind, I don't care. You'll hear now that they say it a little bit differently in French. For example, je veux bien. So that's kind of a positive attitude. You say it, with a smile. Je veux bien. Another one, and it's slightly more negative. Je m'en fiche. Je m'en fiche. You hear that a lot in Paris. And while it's negative, it's kind of like, I don't care. Je m'en fiche. You hear that all the time. Two more. Now, these are, in English, they're a little bit more negative, I suppose. And I'm going to swear. You should cover your children's ears right now. I'm going to say the S word. To say, I don't give a shit, or I don't give a rat's ass, you'll say these. Je m'en fous. Je m'en fous. And lastly, this one, I don't give a rat's ass. J'en ai rien à foutre. That's a bit more vulgar and it expresses a negative emotion. So there you go. All 5 of them in a row. Repeat after me and try and use them in conversation. You ready? It's all the same to me. Ça m'est égal. Ça m'est égal. Number 2, I don't mind. Je veux bien. Je veux bien. Say it with a little smile there. Je veux bien. And then number 3, I don't care. Je m'en fiche. Bit more serious. We're getting progressively more serious here. Number 4, I don't give an S-H-I-T is je m'en fous. Je m'en fous. Good repetition there. I heard that one. And lastly, and I do hope you're repeating after me, I don't give a rat's ass. J'en ai rien à foutre. J'en ai rien à foutre. There you go. That's how we're going to wrap it up. I hope you enjoyed those. Well, that was an episode that went all over the place, from the Bar Hemingway to I don't give a rat's ass, to Niceville or Niceville, and to the Philip Auguste Wall. We really covered it all. Don't forget to check out, if you want the PDFs of all these episodes, they're on patreon.com/The Earful Tower. Support the show and get a whole lot more out of it. FrenchToday.com/Earful10. Get that big discount, 10 plus 20% at the moment. That's 30% off. And otherwise, I want you to have a fantastic week, and maybe I'll see you in a week's time at the Australian Ambassador's residence. Au revoir.